At one point or another, you're going to want to manage the virtual disk that you've created. You might even want to make some changes like compact it or expand the size of it. Well, we can do those kind of things right from over here. And if you'll notice the option to edit the disk and inspect the disk, and we're going to take a look at inspection first. So I'm going to inspect it, and here's what inspection is going to do. I've got a list of virtual hard disks, and I'm going to grab one that I've created and say open. And what it'll do is it'll check for errors and then give you information about the disk, its current size and its maximum size. And you can see that it tells me that it's a VHD and it's a fixed disk. Now, if I had done this with a dynamic disk, you'd be able to see the differences in what the maximum allowable size was and what it was currently at. And this might give you some ideas on what you may want to do with the disk as far as making changes to it. In this case, this is a VHD, and I'd like to convert that to a VHDX. I'm going to use it on a Server 2012. So I'm going to hit close. And this is where we can go into edit disk. Now, I need to warn you, these options that you're about to see change depending upon the type of disk and the situation that you're in, so it can get a little bit confusing. I'm going to click next, and it'll ask me, what disk do you want to work with? Well, I want to work with that same fixed VHD disk that I had because I want to convert it. I'll click next, and you'll see that I have an option for convert. You'll also notice that expand, which would let me grow it in size if I wanted to. But let's go ahead and convert this. Now, when you convert this, I'll say next. What do you want to convert it to? I want to convert it to a VHDX. And then what do you want it to be? Do you want it to be fixed or dynamically expanding? And right now I'm very happy with it being a fixed disk, so I'll leave it as a fixed disk. Now it wants to know the name and location of the new fixed disk size. So I'm going to put in here new fixed VHDX. It gives me a summary of the information, and I can click finish. And now the new disk has been created. We can even go out and inspect it. And there it is, the new fixed VHD disk. We can inspect it, and you'll see the size of it. I left it as fixed. But I also could have converted it to dynamic at the same time. Now, what else can we do? Well, let's open up and edit a dynamic disk because we have some different options for that. So I'm going to browse. I'm going to grab that dyno disk we created earlier. Hit next, and you'll see a new option that's added up here called compact. Now, here's what this is going to do. You know that as you delete files and move files around, that a lot of white space gets created or slack gets created on your disk. Well, on a dynamic disk or a differencing disk, that's where you'll see this option. What happens is the same thing occurs, and what we can do is we can say, hey, go out to that dynamic disk, get rid of that white space and compact it down to kind of clean up our resource. So that's the option I'm going to choose here, and we'll say next and then finish, and he will go out and compact him. As you probably noticed, you also have the ability to expand. So let's go out and edit another disk again. And again, you can do this with dynamic or with a fixed disk. We'll choose a fixed disk. I'll take that fixed disk. Let's take this one, VHD, say open, say next, and I'll choose the expand option. Now it's currently, gives me my current size of 12 gig. What would you like to expand it to? Well, let's not get crazy here. We'll just do it to 15 gig. Hit next and finish, and it will go out and then expand the size of that disk. So you can change your disk sizes. If you estimated a certain disk size need and you've run out of space, well, now you can go ahead and increase that. At the beginning of this clip, I talked about that the options you see listed here when you go to edit a disk are going to change depending upon the type and the situation. And I want to get to a couple of situations where you'll notice it change. First of all, take a look here. Keep in mind these warnings that are here, virtual disks that are in a chain of child disks that are associated with them. You have to be careful with some of these options if you have differencing drives associated with them, if you're working with checkpoints that we're going to be talking about in a little bit, or if it's part of a replication that's been enabled and is currently synchronizing. So you want these to be stable machines that aren't in one of these scenarios. Now, I'm going to hit the browse key just to grab a disk again. so that you can see that these options, a lot of people think that these are the only options that they get. But if the situation changes, we can see some more options here. Let me give you an example. I'm going to hit cancel, and I'm going to edit a particular type of disk. In the last clip, I was talking about differencing disks. Here's a differencing disk that is tied to a parent. And I'm going to hit next and look at the options that I get. Here's one of them, and this is one of the things that comes up the most with differencing disks. Remember what we did in the last clip. If you have a differencing disk so that all of the write changes go to that disk. Well, let's say that you've written a bunch of stuff to the disk. Maybe you are testing some additional new application software, or you were testing an update, and everything works the way that you want it to. Well, maybe you'd like to merge that back into the parent. Well, you can. If you select that differencing disk, you'll get an option to merge. And I'm going to say next, and it'll merge that differencing disk back to the parent. So I can merge it right to the parent, or I can send it to a new virtual disk. And I'll say next and finish, and it'll merge. And one of the last situations we want to take a look at in editing our disks is shrinking the disk. Now, it's kind of interesting that if you go into edit disk and you choose any of the types of disks that are out there, you're not going to see that option. So let me take Dyno disk. It can be fixed or dynamic. You're not going to see the option to shrink. That's because you have to shrink the disk inside of the VM first before you can see the option out here. Let's take a look at that. I've gotten my server 1 is running, and just so you can see the settings really quick, in the last clip I had him set up with a differencing disk, but I've changed him back to where he's using server 1 VHDX, and he has an additional hard drive. This hard drive is the one that I want to shrink down a little bit. So I'm going to say okay, and let's go into the virtual machine and take a look at it. Let's get signed in. And again, I'm going to leave this, I'm not going to maximize this screen just so that you can see that it's the virtual machine that we're working on. And the first thing I'm going to do is go into computer management and shrink that volume down. So let's go up to tools, into computer management. And I'm going to go to disk management, and you'll see that additional volume that I had created with that fixed disk. Right there it is. And it's currently about 10 gig in size. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Windows to shrink that volume. So you see the shrink volume. And I'm going to shrink it down. Oh, let's shrink it down. There we go. 7 gigs worth. And I'll say shrink. Now, if you think about this, I've got a virtual disk that's now, in my case, almost 7 gig larger than I'm going to use. Well, it would sure be nice to be able to reduce this on the virtual disk image and get rid of this unallocated space and return it back to the host machine. Now, the mistake that a lot of people make is they try to do that in Hyper-V first, and they can't find the option. Well, once you go in, you have to go into the VM itself, into Windows, where we're at right here, and shrink that volume first. Then you can go into Hyper-V and shrink it. So let's go ahead and just close that virtual machine. Now, notice the virtual machine is still running. And I'm going to go in, because I want you to see the name of it here. I'm going to go into settings. And this is fixed disk number 1. That's the one I want to shrink, because now it's 7 gig too large. So I can go into edit from here, or you can do it from edit disk over there. And I'll say next. And now you notice another option. Now you see the shrink option has appeared. So I can select shrink. And then say, what size do I want to make it? In other words, how far do I want to shrink this? It's now at 10 gig. Well, let's make the new size 5 gig. We'll take it down to that. And finish. And now I have shrunken that, not only the volume inside of Windows, but I've shrunken now the virtual disk so that I'm not wasting so much disk on the host. As you can tell from the things that we've looked at, editing and managing your virtual disks, once you've been using them and working with them, is not a real difficult process, although the options will change on here and could be confusing. Fixed disk has different options than the dynamic disk. You get the compact option, and you can merge, and then you get that merge option when you have differencing disks. Also, when you shrink a volume in Windows, then you can get the shrink option in here in editing your virtual disk. That's when you'll see it, so that then you can shrink that virtual disk down and save space on the host. Well, sometimes a virtual disk isn't going to provide you with as much performance as you need. There is another way to get even more performance, and that's what we're going to take a look at next with configuring pass-through disks.